Okay, so this is going to be about the adaptive power mode on the HS02, the restarting when set to 100% power. We're going to go through a few things. Some viewers of mine have taught me some stuff, and I want to make some videos so that everybody knows the deal. Uh, but first, I want to say thank you to everyone out there that's been watching my videos, commenting, thumbs up, or if you don't like them, thumbs down. I mean, whatever the case may be. But sharing videos, the whole nine, it's extremely appreciated. Very, very, very much. And I've got a few very dedicated viewers. It seems like they are watching every video. And YouTube makes it kind of hard for me to tell who that is, but you know who you are, and I appreciate you very much. I would like to say real quick, about 97% of the viewers are not subscribed to the channel. It would help tremendously if you would subscribe. And I'm not going to bother you again on that. I'm just asking, if you find this content helpful or interesting, please like and subscribe. Um, so a little background. The HSO2 A, which is the big brother of the two, um, you can tell by the larger tips. So this is a C245 tip that goes with HSO2A, and the HSO2B, which is the smaller brother, is a C210 tip. So if your power supply is not powerful enough, this iron will start over and over again until finally it heats up a little each time and gets hot enough, and it'll go ahead and crank on up. What it is, and it's not a fault of the iron. We figured all of this out. It's not a fault of the iron. The iron is basically drawing whatever it needs to heat up as fast as possible in relation to the power setting on the iron itself. This iron is currently set at 100% power, and we're going to do a few tests here. Now, here's what I'm testing with. I'm using a Rigol DP832 lab bench top power supply. I have it currently in parallel mode, and I have the current on each channel set to a maximum of 2.85 amps, and I have the voltage set at 10 volts per channel. And so what I'm going to do is go in here and we'll plug this up, and I'll try to give you, as it starts up, what I'm getting on the display there. Now this has been upgraded to the version 1.8 firmware. I got a video on upgrading that. And I found out with this testing, and look, this is not something I figured out. There's some great viewers who have taught me some stuff about this, and this is what they taught me. If you go back and look through the comments and stuff, you'll see a comment where one of the viewers told me that the adaptive power mode, and it takes a while for it to go through it, but the adaptive power mode tests your power supply, and it slowly heats up. And I watched adaptive power run while plugged into my Rigol bench power supply, and I could see what it was doing because it'll show me the amperage readings and everything as it comes up. Uh, and what I saw it doing was between the two channels, it was hitting anywhere from a very low wattage up to about 40 watts at a time. It seemed to be pulsing the power supply ever so often and hitting it with amperage. I think the highest between the two channels in parallel that I saw was less than 3 amps, probably about 2.25, 2.5 amps between the two channels. And I'm going to test it with just one channel because this power supply only goes up to 3 amps. That's why I've got it in parallel, so I can have 20 volts at 6 amps if needed. And I don't have over voltage or current protection on because it's not pulling. This doesn't pull that much. So to give you backstory on my power supply I've been using, it is a GAN style 265 watt, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 channel output power supply. Supposedly it does 3 amps at 20 volts. If it really did that, then this iron would start up with it with no problem. Excuse me, with no problems. So apparently it's not even doing that. And I'm going to try to set the amperage on this benchtop power supply lower and lower until I see the lowest amperage that this is going to start up with. Now this is going to take a while to film this video because I'm going to have to let this tip cool down between each process because I want to start with a cold tip. The tip is cold right now. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and push this tip back in again. Have it in there. And what I'm going to do is we're going to plug it in and I'm going to bypass straight into the settings menu. So let's go into the settings menu. Oh, shoot. There we go. So let's go to handle set. And then you can see that power is set to 100%. So now I'm going to back out. And this is set to heat up to 300 Celsius once it fires up. And there you go. And it's pulling 1, 2, 3. Actually, it's now pulling 3.1, 2, 3, 4. About 3.4 amps is what this iron pulled while it was coming up. I can feel it. I can feel the heat here. So it's heating up. It's heating up quite well. Wattage, I really didn't look at that. I apologize. I don't have my camera set up so that I can put it on the benchtop power supply to see. Look, I got no reason to lie to you. I'm trying to help. And that's so looking at that heat up on 2 channels between the 2 shared channels, it was 1.4 amps on channel 1 and it was 1.9 amps on channel 2. So that is 3.3. So 3.3 amps, and there was some change. So I'm going to say 3.4 amps is what this pulled heating up. So I know this benchtop power supply can handle. So let's do this. I am going to put overcurrent protection at 2.95 amps on a single channel. Then let's go ahead and I'm going to turn channel 1 off. Let's go to channel 2. I'm going to set overcurrent protection. It's already on 2.85. And let's set the voltage to 20 volts. And yeah, the over voltage I don't need. So overcurrent, I've got it set to 2.85 amps. And I have the power supply dialed in to give 2.85 amps. So let me just plug this in. It's still warm, but I just want to see if it trips out, because it will trip out on this power supply if it pulls too much. So, and that was 2.8. It pulled the full 2.85 and held there. So that's on a single channel, not using the first channel at all. So 3 amps is looking like that this will go. This is heated up. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pause. I'm going to cut the video. I'll come back again once this tip is cool again. And I'm going to do the same thing I just done. The power supply will be set to 20 volts. It'll be overcurrent protected to 2.85 amps. And I'll have it set to 2.85 amps. And we'll see what happens. So technically with the dual channel in parallels in channel 1 and 2, it went to 3.4 amps total firing up from cold. So let's see if it trips it out. We'll be right back once it cools down. Okay, so we're back. And this tip has cooled down completely. It's actually, when I picked it up, I could feel the casing was cold. Now let me tell you what, I've actually changed a couple settings on the power supply. Now my power supply is still wired in parallel mode, but I have channel 1 turned off. Channel 2 is the only one that's on. I have my amperage set to 2.95 amps. My overcurrent protection is set at 3 amps, and my voltage is set to 20 volts. And the reason why is I want to see if this will trigger the overcurrent protection of the power supply set low like that. Because we did see that 3.4 amp during the adaptive power mode. So I don't know if we're going to see that, because I haven't seen any high voltage or amperages during crank up on this right here. So let me start it up and show you that it is 100%. So we'll get this going. Yep, we're still set to 100% power. Let me put the cap on because it get hot. And start. And she's coming up. 2.94 amps. It's riding there at 31 watts, 2.6 amps, and it's dropping down. Okay, so it didn't get above 2.9 amps during the startup. I'm sorry. My wife just brought dinner in. So, watching the as it started up, it did not exceed 3 amps during startup. So during the adaptive power, apparently it spikes. It tries to catch and see what the maximum amount that your power supply will supply. But it looks like it needs just under 3 amps to fire up. So that is some very interesting information. If my GAN 265 watt power supply was giving actually 3 amps, then it would be able to handle this and not restart. It's simply that's what it is. Let's go ahead and pull this out so we can let it start cooling for some more experiments. Yeah, I know. I shouldn't use pliers to jerk that out. So, that's pretty cool information, I think. 20 volts, of course, that was good on it. 2.9 amps is what it pulled while it was starting up and heating up from a cold start. And the wattage did not exceed 32 watts, is what I saw on the readout. And again, my overcurrent was set at 3 amps, and my amperage on 20 volts was set at 2.95 amps. And for anybody that doesn't understand how the some of that kind of works, I set the amperage at 2.95 amps, but what it is whatever you're starting is only going to draw what it draws. Uh, if it draws 1 amp, then I'm going to see 1 amp drawn on the power supply, even though I have it set at 1.95. It's not going to just supply 2.95 because I have it set there. It will supply up to 2.95. And then if it exceeds 3 amps, it'll trip it out, and that will over voltage protection will kick in on that channel. So I was kind of wondering, because I accidentally started it up during my testing before I started this video, and I only had it on one channel, and it started, and I was kind of surprised to see that. So I can definitely tell you right now that as long as you can supply 20 volts at at an actual 3 amps, it'll start. Now I would recommend 5 amps. And that's why I put my power supply in parallel, because I figured I would need up to 5 amps to start this iron, but you don't. You need just under 3 amps to start this iron. So if you have 3 amps or more that your power supply will actually provide, And that's the thing about getting the Chinese overseas power supplies. Some of them are great, some of them are not. Some of them are rated at 3 amps, but they're not actually putting out 3 amps. That's like the one I use on my bench all the time is rated for 3 amps at 20 volts. It's rated for 5 amps at 28 volts, but 20 volts, it's rated for 3 amps. And then for all the voltages from 19 volts down, it's rated for 5 amps, but just at 20 volts, it's rated for 3. And it's not supplying that. So I really don't think it's supplying even 5 amps at any of the other voltages. I would imagine that power supply is only giving you uh, and the way it's tripping out is like right there at it. So I would say because my power supply is set at 2.95 and it was running 2.9 amps starting up. So I think what I'm going to try to do next is I'm going to go ahead and pull the jumpers out for parallel because I don't think I'm going to need those um, at all. So I don't need it to be in parallel mode anymore, and I'm just going to swap over to channel 1 because I tend to use it more than anything else. And what I'm going to do is set my maximum current. I think I'll go down to 285 at 20 volts. Let me go ahead and set the voltage to 20 volts at a current rating of 2.85 amps. Okay, so channel 1 is now set. Overcurrent protection is set to 3. Over voltage protection is off. Current is set to 2.85 amps at 20 volts. So I'm going to let this cool down. Let me see if it may or may not be cold now. I mean, I can touch it, but I can still feel some warmth. So I'll come back as soon as I think this is cool, and it's cool to the touch when I pick it up, and we will fire the iron up again at the lower current setting. So what I want to do is find out exactly what threshold this iron starts to restart over and over again. And I really believe that we'll probably be at this 285, 2.85 amps or below. So still some warmth. We'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so the tip is cold to the touch. Let's put the lid back on. I'm going to plug it in. And now let's turn on channel 1. And I'm not just doing this because I don't think you don't believe me, but I'm checking the power to make sure that it is each time set at 100, and it is. I mean, that's for me. So I'm not really going to look at this display until editing, but I'm going to look at the power supply this time. So coming up, 2.848 amps, 26 watts. It is just building slower, still 20 volts. So 2.8 amps on startup, 20, I think it was 21 watts. So that is interesting. So let me turn that channel off. Let's pull this and let this all cool down again. And I'm wanting to, and the reason I've got other tips. I mean, I could have several tips up here and change out to cool ones, but I don't want maybe a different resistance on a different tip to change any of these settings. And that's why I'm going to do the remainder of my testing on channel 1 set to 20 volts at a 3 overcurrent protection of 3 with no voltage over voltage protection on. And so the only thing I'm going to do is drop the amperage down. So current is at 2.85 and I am changing it to 2.75. So now my current is set to 2.75 amps. So when this cools down, we'll come back and do the exact same thing we just did at 2.75 amps, 20 volts on this Rigol DP 832 power supply. We'll be right back. Okay. So it is cooled down again. Let's plug her in. And again, we got it set at 2.75 amps. Turn channel 1 on. Double check power. 100% power. And 2.749 amps. And it's going straight up. So it is right there at the threshold. Okay, fired straight up with no problems. So watching it, watching it come up, it was drawing 2.749 amps. And my power supply is set at 2.75 amps. Now, I mean, if you don't know, Rigol DP 832 is a pretty decent power supply, lab benchtop power supply. And actually, if you saw my display, you would see its color. Long story. We're not getting into that. But anyway, I can actually call it a DP 832A. So I'm going to change the current to 2.65 amps. And it should draw more than the 2.65 amps. So let's see what happens when this cools down again. And I'm slowing down talking because I'm kind of thinking if I should be adjusting my overcurrent protection versus my set current protection. Nah, I think I'm right. So I've got it set at 2.65 amps at 20 volts and overcurrent protection at 3 amps. So I think if this trips out, I will set my overcurrent protection at 2.75 as well, and set my voltage, my current, my power supply back up to that. So this is kind of cool. I think I'm finding some stuff out here for myself, and it's telling me so far that my regular little small power supply on my bench here is putting out less than 2.75 amps when it should be putting out a maximum of 3. So when this cools down, we'll be right back and we'll test it at 2.65 amps and see if it'll start again. Okay, it's cooled down again. And we are now ready to test the power supply at 2.65 amps. Let's turn the channel on. Again, let's double check our power setting. 100%. 2.649 amps. And it's still, oh, see, it dropped down 17, 19, it's at 20. So my voltage started going, it started varying on the iron, which would allow it to operate at a lower amperage. So it was, that time it started up at 2.64 amps with just under what my power supply would supply. So it does seem like the iron is adjusting to the power supply to a certain extent. Let me change let's just go down to 2.5 amps. Let's just go to, yeah. So I got it set at 2.5 amps now. And let's see how low we can go and still get this to fire up. Because every time I watch the voltage on the screen, and I don't think I saw it drop below 20 volts until this last time that I went to 2.65 amp. So let's see what it does when this cools down at 2.5 amps. And what I want to try to do, because the iron did trip out and restart with this power supply. And I think I had it set at 2 amps per channel, and I forgot and only turned one channel on, and it tripped out and started restarting. And I think maybe we'll get down that low before we start tripping completely out. It seems like it's heating up a little slower because the voltage is dropping on the iron. So it's kind of regulating itself down to a lower voltage, it seems like. Biggest problem with these things is FNIRSI does not give you any information. You got to guess it and figure it out. It'd be great if they would just do a manual that explained all these different things. So let me talk a minute here about the adaptive power. So, and I will eventually fire it back up again in adaptive power, and I'll try it on single. If it comes up fully on single, then I'll do it on parallel at 20 volts and allow it to go up to 6 amps. And we'll see what we get out of that as well. But the iron fired up in adaptive mode will basically test your power supply as it heats up, and it seems to pulse and surge your power supply as a kind of a test to see what it can handle. Because I noticed how it seemed like as it was starting to go through the bar graph of adaptive power, my power supply really wasn't registering any perceptible voltage. Then all of a sudden it would spike every now and then to a low voltage, under 1 amp. It would just spike milliamp. And as it progressed on, it started all of a sudden towards the end of it, it was spiking 1.5 amps, 1.6 amps, 1.8 amps. And that's how it was doing in adaptive power. So it seems like the iron is trying to figure out how fast it can start at whatever your power supply can handle while adjusting the power setting on the iron. And so when it's all said and done, that's why your power setting on your iron is lower than 100%. You see all these tests we're doing that it doesn't change because the adaptive power figures out, okay, so this is where I have an issue. I'm not going to set the power any higher than this. And so each time you restart your iron, it stays set at that lower power setting. If you get another power supply you hook it up to, then run adaptive power again, which will adjust to that particular power supply. And so adaptive power is not designed to be used every time you start your iron to get it to start at 100%. Adaptive power is used to adapt your iron to the power supply, hence adaptive power. And that's come to me through some very, very smart viewers who are educating me. And that's why I do this stuff. I want to teach you guys everything I can and help you out, but I also want to learn too. And this is so awesome to be able to learn myself. And not that I think I know everything, but it's just that I get an opportunity to learn from you guys. And I think that's awesome. So, oh, that's cool. I didn't run my mouth so much, it's back to cool already. So let's plug her back in. Put the cap on, in, and turn the channel on. I know it's set to 100%, but I'm going to keep checking just to be sure, because I want to make sure everything is just right. So fire she up. and it's coming up 2.499 amps. See, it's at 7 volts. It's dropped it way down. So that tells me something. I'm going to be honest with you. What I'm thinking, because I don't know that it'll go much lower than 7 volts. Let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and drop the current level to 2.25 amps. And I'm just going to, well, no, I'm going to keep letting it cool down. Because what I'm thinking now, and please comment below and tell me what you think, because you guys know more than I do. That's obvious. I mean, you showed that already. So tell me what you think. I believe if your power supply, this iron will drop the voltage. It's set to 20. You can see in there when I'm checking it's set to 20 volts. But it'll drop that voltage when your current supply is maxed out. It will continue to heat, but it drops the voltage so it doesn't pull too much from your power supply. And then I think once it gets down to a low enough voltage that it can't properly operate, it's just too much amps and it can't compensate anymore for the power supply, and the power supply starts to trip out because it's pulling too much. So we've got that set at 225. Let's see. I really didn't let it heat up much this time, so it's not super hot, to be honest with you. So it ain't gonna take long for this to cool down, and we'll be right back. Okay, so to try to save some time, I went ahead and set the power supply to a max output of 2 amps at 20 volts. And let's give that a shot, because what I'm trying to do is to make it reset. Turn the channel on. 20 volts, 100%. Let's go back and crank her up. There it goes. So it reset with the power supply set at 2 amps. So let me change the current to 2.15 amps. So we're going to try 2.15 amps. Now it really didn't, there was no heat up really at all. So I'm going to go ahead and give her a shot right off the bat. Check settings. Yep. And start. So 2.15 amps is firing up. So let's let this cool down, because I want to see the threshold of exactly where it is happening. Now let me say some stuff here. So I might be out in left field. I see the voltage dropping, the voltage draw dropping on the iron. The power supply is still set at 20 volts. The Rigol DP832 is not a smart power supply. I mean, it doesn't communicate with the device. It puts out what you tell it to put out, whatever you program it to put out on whatever channel. And this iron is adjusting its voltage draw. I'm really not 100% sure exactly what all that means at the moment. I'll have to think about it for a little while, and maybe post this for you guys to chime in as well, and we'll get together and chat or in comments below and try to figure this out. But just spitballing off the top of my head, I'm really thinking that the iron is compensating for the lack of amperage by dropping its voltage down. I mean, I don't really understand everything. I know this communicates with a power supply to regulate what the voltage is. You can set it in here, but I mean, your stuff will work itself out. And I don't really understand all of that, so I can't actually say um, a whole lot about it. I don't know how that works. Uh, so I don't know how this right here figures out that it needs to drop the voltage down. I really don't. Maybe it sees where the amperage is climbing, and I don't know, through some kind of feedback, maybe it figures it out. It's gonna be a long video, guys, but I'm gonna put chapters in it so you can jump around however you want. But I do have it. I do have it set at 200, and no, I'm not stupid. I know it's cold already. I'm just seeing how cold it is. That's right. I'm from Louisiana, but I'm not that stupid. Um, I've got it set to 2.1 amps. We already know at 2 amps, it will reset the iron. So I've got it set to 2.1 amps now, which is really kind of making me bumming me out, because it's telling me my power supply is just barely putting out 2 amps when it should be able to put out 3 amps. Well, my cheapy power supply. Thought I'd found a decent one. Now, also another thing to think about. Well, let me just talk about that in the final thoughts. And let me turn the channel off. We'll plug it in. Turn the channel on. Handle set, 20 and 100%. And it is just barely drawing under 2.1 amps. So we are going to let this cool again, which we're not really letting it get up to temperature, so it doesn't take all that long for it to cool. And I'm going to change it to 2.05 amps. So it is just barely over 2 amps now. And so we'll be right back once it cools down. Okay, so now we're ready. And this is going to be the final test, because I have it set at 2.05 amp on the supply, again at 20 volts, with a 3 amp overcurrent protection and no over voltage protection. I've got this thing upgraded and decked out, and it'll go 4 digits on current. I can get into microamps adjusting to find out where this is going to be restarting, but restarting at 2 amps, and if it'll fire up at 2.05 amps, that's good enough resolution for me. Has it fired up at 2.1 amps? So let's see what we can see. 20 volts, 100% power, and it is barely at the threshold. Now you can see it's down to 6 volts. So I'm going to say that for this iron to start at 100% power, you have to have a power supply that will give at least over 2 amps at 20 volts. Now here's the kicker. If you got a smart aleck power supply, and I'm kind of spitballing going into some thought process here, but if you got a smart aleck power supply and it's set this is set to 20 volts, and you have a smart aleck uh, cable from your iron to your power supply. Your iron's telling your smart aleck power supply that you want 20 volts. Your smart aleck power supply is trying to give it 20 volts. And this is, of course, going to draw up to, we have seen a spike of 3.4 amps. And so I'm thinking that will reset a smart aleck power supply and cause this to reset. But a plain old dumb power supply that'll give you 20 volts at, let's just say 2.5 amps. I think that's a good deal. I'd really say 3 amps. I think your iron will start at 100% power with no problem. Your voltage may fluctuate on your iron and it may heat up slower while the voltage is fluctuating to do that. Now, if your power supply can output 20 volts at 5 amps, I believe you will be able to start 100% of the time at full voltage and power and just bump up there really fast. So I think it's the smart aleck power supply getting in the way than it is the iron or the iron itself. So I've got a lot more respect for the iron, and how they designed the firmware inside the iron. So let me turn the channel off. I'm going to set my current back to 3 amps, and I'm going to set my over current protection at 3.30 amps, which is where it's normally set. And let's start it in adaptive power. And I'm not going to do it in parallel. I don't think I need to. If you think I need to, comment below and tell me, and we can do the adaptive power set in parallel mode on this power supply and see what we get. But let's do this, and then we will go into some final thoughts. Again, I just want to look at my power setting. It's all still the same. Nothing has changed. So let's go here. Down arrow, plug in, hold it. And I did something. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. Not down. Up arrow, plug in. Do not touch the tip. The soldering iron, press OK. Now, I'm not going to look at this, but you see it. And I'm going to tell you what my power supply is doing. So 0.5 watts, 0.04, 0.8 amps, spiking 25 watts, 1.3, fluctuating. Now let's see, spike 10 amps, 20 watts, not 10 amps, 10 watts, 20 watts, 2 amps, 27 watts. Let's see what we get next. 17 watts at 0.02 amps. 59 watts at 1.6 amps. 5 and 9 watts with no change on amperage. 57 watts at 2.9 amps. And it stopped. And so we're in the deal. So you can see, I think my highest wattage was 57 watts that it drew during the test. And it was 2.9 amps. And it didn't trigger my over current protection. So it didn't go over 3 amps. All right. So let's plug it in and see what percentage it's set the iron at? 96%. So it set the iron at 96%. So it is saying that it should be able to start at 96% with the settings the way they are set at 20 volts. And I believe it because we did that. We did a test like that and it came up without a problem. So here is some of my final thoughts. So adaptive power, I think we have found, is basically the iron testing the power supply to see the maximum draw at the rated wattage and power level of the iron. And I think it's starting at a lower setting because in the beginning, you get like less than 1 watt and way in the microamps of draw at 20 volts. And once it starts to build up to a certain level, then it starts spiking. Your wattage goes up higher and higher and higher. And I've seen it max out at almost 60 watts. And amperage maxed out at 2.9 amps worth of draw during the test. And it set the iron at 96% power. And so the iron is, as far as the iron's concerned, 96% is what this power supply needs to start up with no problems. All right, now we did testing, and with a dome power supply, we can get this iron to start at 100% power all the way down to 2.05 amps supply, and it doesn't go over that at 20 volts. Now, with a Smart Aleck power supply, it trips it out because it knows what it's supposed to be doing. And apparently, I don't know, I may have to do some testing on that as well to see what the voltage is doing on the iron plugged into a Smart Aleck power supply. Because just plugged into this DP832 power supply at 20 volts, 2.05 amps, the iron starts at 100% every time, but it starts slower and slower and slower the lower your amperage supply from the power supply is. I bump it up to 3 amps, where it's at now with an over voltage of 3 amps. And it starts quicker and it stays at 20 volts while it starts up. So here's some of my thoughts. I believe your mileage will vary depending on tip. I believe that this tip right here has got a pretty decent amount of thermal mass on the end of it. I think a tip with more thermal mass will do differently. Probably it would restart at a higher amperage limit. With this tip, we could continue to run it without restarting down to 2.05 amps. I believe if I had an even smaller tip with less resistance, or how would it's late. I may be thinking backwards on that. But an even smaller tip with less thermal mass, I believe that we may be even able to get it to start at 100% power below 2 amps. I think it depends on your tip. So I believe you're going to have a little bit of a variance there. So don't go out and try to buy yourself a 20 volt, 2.5 amp power supply and think, oh, great, that's going to work. I believe this is my thought process. And guys, y'all chime in. Girls, y'all chime in. And let's talk about this in the comments below. But I believe if you get a Smart Aleck power supply that will supply 20 volts at 5 amps, truly supply that, you are golden with this this iron. If you get a dumbbell power supply that just supplies what it's rated for, there's no smartness to it. You set this iron to 20 volts and plug her into that power supply, if it's got at least a 20-volt output at 2.5 amps, I'm going to actually say 3. If it will actually supply 3 amps at 20 volts and it is a dumbbell power supply, I believe this iron's going to start every single time, whatever tip you put in it. Uh, I think you'll be good and set up in that way. But we have seen the lowest we were able to get with this setup, with that tip, this iron, and a Rygold DP832 power supply, was 20 volts supplying 2.05 amps, and it did not restart. Started slow, voltage had dropped on the iron, and probably recovery I think would probably be just fine, to be honest with you, once it's heated up and going. So that little bit of extended heat up time, dropping the voltage because of that, it's negligible. It's still heating up way faster than any regular iron is going to take to heat up to functional temperatures. And it's always been my findings that with uh, benchtop soldering stations or just pencil soldering irons, that especially when you got a readout, it'll tell you it's there, but I don't think it's really there. I think it's just telling you it's there. It thinks it's there or whatever. Because every time I've set my temperature on a benchtop soldering station or whatever, once it hit that temperature, I would let it set and soak for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I would start soldering, and I wouldn't have any problems. But if I just seemed like I'd grab it and go with it, it would start lagging. If I did a lot of repetitive, especially with a backplane or anything with a high thermal mass, started soldering it, it couldn't keep up. So that's my thoughts. That's where I think we're at with this. I hope that I have put some questions or answered some questions and put some worries to bed as far as this iron and a power supply and what we need to do what we got to do. Uh, I, like I said, I believe that um, a non-smart power supply of 20 volts and 3 amps would be sufficient to run this iron. Not at full capacity, but it will start at 100% power. And I believe a Smart Elec power supply of a maximum rating of 5 amps that actually puts that out. So you get what you pay for. You get the Chinese, you might get one that puts out 5 amps, or you might not. But if you buy one of those expensive ones, yeah, I think you got one that's going to put out what it says it's putting out. So, with that said, I'm going to call it quits for tonight. And I may not edit this video till tomorrow, or I may get spunky and edit it tonight. Who knows? Um, Regardless, if you enjoy this kind of content, if you've gotten something out of this, I would ask that you would like and subscribe. If you didn't get anything out of it, I would ask that you would at least subscribe, because I promise, I'm telling you, that even if you don't like what I'm doing right on this video, you're going to like something, because I do a little bit of everything. Knives, archery, fishing, electronics. I mean, I enjoy everything. So you're eventually going to see something that you like. I love DIY. And when I have to do something and I think that it may or may not be something that everybody may or somebody may benefit from, then I'll film it. Like changing out the spring hangers on a washing machine, changing out the van video, changing out the fans instead of buying a whole $350 system to replace the fans. And so where I see something I think could benefit everyone, I do a video on it. So with that said, I'm finally going to sign off. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Nah, you go ahead and sleep. You're good. Go ahead and sleep. So anyway, I appreciate you guys. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate you. And I will see you on the next one. Your time is very important to me, and I thank you for spending it here with me. Thanks, and God bless.